Hello and good morning to all you fabulous fighting fantasy aficionados. My name is Hakon, and today I will take my final look for now on The Citadel of Chaos by Steve Jackson. Book number two in the Fighting Fantasy series, but already in book number two, it's deviating a lot from the original gaming system in that it introduces spells and magic as being possible to use by the hero, that is, by you, as you play the book. And it makes for a very different structure, which actually I quite like. Just to make a little example, in most of the fighting fantasy books, when you have an encounter, that is to say, you find a room, you find some monsters to or other creatures to interact with, you're often given a few options, and that is to retreat, try to run away, communicate in some way, attack, sometimes use an item. But in this one, in addition to those things, every combat situation also introduces, and also or a puzzle situation, introduces another option, and that is to use magic. And very often, when you're presented with the use of magic as an option, you're given a few more options, which is what spell to use. And this, of course, means that every encounter in this book will inevitably have more paragraphs. And you would think normally that that means it will feel like a shorter book. It doesn't really. And I think one of the reasons why is because all the encounters in this book are memorable and interesting. Every single encounter has its own illustration as well. I think there's only one illustration I was missing from the book, and that is at the end, you are given an illustration of the main villain, Baltus Dyer, but you are not given an illustration of the Claw Beast, which is one of the monster that he sends out to get you. That's the only thing missing. Otherwise, all the major encounters, and they're all good, have illustrations, very well thought out. And also, I will be showing you the map in a moment. Just to say something more about the structure of it. So, magic spells. This also changes another aspect of the game mechanics of the book. Normally, in these game books, of course, one of the things you're trying to do as you play it is to find the correct path through the book. Usually, there are alternative paths are very minor in these books. You have one main path you need to stick to because there are certain items you need to pick up and in order to win the game. Sometimes there are alternatives that, while possible, are much harder than the correct path, which means you have a certain leeway of alternative paths. And you do in this book as well. There are a few options. When I did my last playthrough, I could have done it much shorter by not getting locked up in the prison cell, for instance. But I thought it was quite nice to get into the prison cell because I had to get out of it, and I actually got into a section of the book that I otherwise would have missed. Nothing essential was there, but if I had missed it, it would have been less interesting, I think. So, right, I think I should just have a look at the map now. So if I try to stay a little bit on one side of the picture now so I can put up the map on the other side. Right, so after finishing my books, I always map them out, and I do it in a sort of a flow chart way where where every single paragraph of the book is presented, and all the choices are laid out. So it's not a map in the normal sort of topological, geographical floor plan sense. Interesting structure. Of course, this is quite usual for the fighting fantasy books, is you have usually normally two or three varying paths that sort of branch off from one place, and then they join again. And then it branches off again, and then it joins again, and you get these sort of points that all the paths pass through. an interesting thing here, I think, is that some of the branching of the path actually sort of crosses over a little bit. So especially, because I'll just go through here. In the beginning, you're getting to the gate and you're trying to get in. And then there are a few different choices you can make in the courtyard. One of which is the right one, and then there's a few incorrect ones. If you want to win the game, that is. Excuse me. Now, that's all fine and well. And then you're getting to the gates, and of course, then it all goes back into one place again. And then it spreads out again, because once you're inside a citadel, you can choose different paths, although some of them do cross over. But one interesting thing about what's happening inside here, which is inside the citadel itself, is that some of the branching, some of the branches cross over in different places. Now, this makes for a much more dynamic interior, I think, and it makes for a more interesting adventure, because if all the paths always sort of join and split in exactly the same places, it can get a little bit predictable. One of the very interesting things here is, of course, that if you choose the wrong path in the beginning, like I did the first time I played it, you end up in the prison cell. But of course, there are many ways along the way where you can be sent to the prison cell, and these are the long lines here. So the prison cell is up here. So if you linger too long in the library, like I did, then you get imprisoned. A few other things can happen. You can go into traps. Is there a trap? I'm not sure. You can certainly suddenly find yourself surrounded by guards, and then you get arrested, so to speak. Was there something else I wanted to say about this bit? Yes, of course there are a few memorable encounters in this game that I missed because I found the correct path relatively early on, and I sort of figured out that this was the right way to go. There are a few interesting things that I didn't get to show you. Let's see. You have in the courtyard, you can bump into this gentleman here, which is an interesting little encounter. You can, let's see. Also, there's a sort of strange Cthulhu-ish kind of creature that shows up in the courtyard as well. There is, let's see. There are a few more. Very interesting encounter is the witches. The Witch's Kitchen. This is almost like straight out of a Goethe book, I think. Very interesting. Or Macbeth. Could be from Macbeth. Or very interesting encounter. There is one more that is worth pointing out. That is because I also really love the illustration here. There is this one here. So Washerwoman by the underground river. And I don't want to give too much away because I really think that everyone should play this book, and also I think you should play it again because you do want to get to these other encounters. Or you can do like I do. If you play it a few times and you manage to win it, I would recommend making your own map, because when you make your own map, you end up reading the whole book and you get through all the encounters and all the possibilities that can happen, and it's very interesting to see how it is structured, and it's quite fun to see these things happening. So very memorable encounters, and many, of course, the Witch's Kitchen and the Washerwoman. That's in the middle part where I went and I fought the Gark, and I went to the library, which is what you have to do in order to get the correct items to win. Spoilers, sorry. And of course, the path that I also managed to get onto is the one where I met the leprechaun. And after the leprechaun, it splits again, and you get either to the underground river, or you get to the library. Oh, not the library, the wine cellar, which is where I went, or you can get to the witch's kitchen. So those are the sort of 3 new paths again. So there's a very interesting way of splitting it up, which really works well. A problem with this book when it comes to the game aspect of it is that the main challenge for you is to find the correct path and to pick the correct spells. Even if with the lowest possible magic skill or magic ability, if you pick, then you have to pick the pretty much the correct spells that you will need, and not that much else. It's a little bit else still. But if you've got a high magic ability, then of course, then you can pick all the spells basically, and you would have everything you need. Now, as you get towards the end, and this is also quite interesting, I think, in this book. Now, there's a choke point again, of course, after the middle bit where you get to the banquet hall, and you go through that, and then you have 3 rooms, and if you start at the one on the right, you can still go back to the left, and if you start on the one on the left, you can still go to the middle. Or to the right again. But of course, once you're through the middle or the left room, you can't go back to the other one. Now, the room on the right isn't that interesting. There's a gargoyle there. The room in the middle is interesting, and because that's where the children are. And the room on the left is where the Baltus Dyer's wife is. It doesn't really say specifically, but that is his wife. You can sort of get that clue in one of the books you read in the library. Oh, that's another thing. The books in the library are giving you clues, not just because one of the things you can find there is the combination to the door, but there's also a clue about how to defeat Baltus Dyer, which I think is a really nice touch. Because I know Steve Jackson, he likes leaving clues. He doesn't want your choices to be random, so he wants to give you little hints and clues as to what you're supposed to do. And they are very subtle as well, which I really like. So it becomes like a puzzle to be solved rather than just, I'm just going to go left, I'm going to go right, I don't know. What do I do next to beat this guy, etc. So it's very nice. One other interesting thing about this, because already by the time you get to these last 3 rooms, and then you get to further on to the mix and the Ganges, there's 2 more things coming after. And then you get to Baltus Dyer's room at the end. Even with the magic spells, and even with the way it's structured now, it already feels like quite a rich story. And because all the encounters are memorable, it also feels like it's a nice, good length of story you're going through by the time you get to the end. Even with all the magic, extra paragraphs of magic that you have to include in this book. But another interesting thing I found was that when you get to Baltus Dyer, and I did count the paragraphs, I think there are actually still another 50 paragraphs left of the book, which means that the final boss fight, defeating the villain, is an entire 1/8 of the book. And I think that is by far the biggest chunk of a book I've seen so far in any of these books, devoted to one encounter. And that starts here at the end here, I think. Let's see, that's the Ganges there, I think. Yes. And then you have this last bit here. That is all Baltus Dyer and the encounter there. The reason these 2 share a paragraph there, that's a dead end kind of paragraph, let's call it. So if I just put in search term here, the end. Now, there are a few places where you can die. Usually it's because you've chosen the wrong spell, you're stuck in the cell, you can't get out. A few other choices you can make that are fatal. Usually they have to be stupid choices. That is to say, it's things that you wouldn't really do because it doesn't make any sense to do them. You could be a bit unlucky as well, but once you get towards the end, of course, there are a few possibilities that you may be trying your best, but you can still fail. The Ganges are one of those encounters, a bit tricky. And also, of course, Baltus Dyer, in his encounter, there are, as you can see, many places where you either run out of options or you make a fatal mistake. And of course, there's a lot of timing involved in that encounter in how you battle him. Yes. So the final boss fight as well, really interesting, and it's a bit of a shame, I think, that I managed to do it on the first try because I missed out on many of the excitement of trying out or many of the other options and failing. Of course, when you do it, when I just do a read through of the book and just read the book and map it out, it's not as exciting as when you play it. So there are several ways to beat him. And there are lots of ways to be defeated by him as well without having the chance of fighting him. Many of the paths at the end lead to actual physical battle as well. And of course, there are some more cunning solutions to the problem of trying to defeat him. So there are a few places where your adventure is over, but of course it still doesn't feel unfair at any point like it sometimes does in an Ian Livingstone book. It feels like it's because you didn't do the right thing in many cases that you die, not because you turn left instead of right and therefore you walk into a trap and therefore you die. It's not like that. So I really commend Steve Jackson for having done that properly. One more interesting thing before I look at the probability chart. There is an orphan in this book, and by an orphan I mean a paragraph. Oh, I should say something about typos too, but I'll talk about the orphan first. An orphan is what I call a paragraph that has no reference to it. They are usually would be a leftover of editing or constructing the game because something was changed, and the change didn't actually end up in every remnant of that change being removed. So there are some vestigial paragraphs from earlier edits. And of course, there's one in Warlock of Firetop Mountain. There's because of some change to do with the keys, and there is one in this one, and I'll tell you exactly why. That's right here in when you get to the children's room. And also I thought that seemed a little bit strange, that encounter, because there was something a little bit off with it, the way it was structured. And now I know why, because the thing is, when I finished mapping the whole thing and I saw, I got 399 paragraphs, I had to find the last one, of course. So I found the last one, and it turns out that in an earlier draft of this book, you were supposed to be able to use magic as well in the encounter with the children, but in the final version, you can't do that. You can kill them, you can attack them with your sword, or you can use an item. And usually in most encounters in this game, it's use an item, communicate, fight, spell. And of course, originally it was intended for you to use a spell there as well. So it does seem a little bit sort of stunted down and reduced in a way, that encounter. And possibly that is because the final boss fight perhaps needed to be fleshed out a little bit more, and he felt that he should devote more paragraphs to that. That's just my theory. But yes, there is a remnant of an earlier edit where you can use spells in the children's room to get past the kids. So the result of one of those spells is still here. Let's see, I'll just zoom in a little bit now so I can see it. Let's see. Let's see, there we are. So yeah, so this is the result of an illusion spell is what's left over in here. Paragraph 258, by the way, if anyone is counting. Other typos, there's only really one proper typo, I would say, or not really, sort of a follow-on error, rather. In the very beginning, when you go to, if you've been to the fireplace and or the campfire and spoken to the people around it, and you fought them and defeated them, you would have 8 gold pieces. And if you then go to talk to the people who are arguing over the price of a dagger, and you are given the option of buying it for 8 gold pieces, that paragraph does not indicate in any way whatsoever that you at that point could have had 8 gold pieces. Instead, it says you can use a Fool's Gold spell to create 8 gold pieces worth of gold. So that's an error, a proper error, I think. In the introduction, it says you got a lantern, but in the book, every time there's a reference to your use of light, it says torch, which I suppose potato in a way. It's not a. You can sort of argue that you can use the word torch about a lantern. And in British, certainly we call any kind of light that you walk around with you can call that a torch. Nothing wrong with that, I guess. Even though it's technically not a torch. Interestingly, of course, also in the illustration here in the beginning, it says that there are 2 lanterns next to the gate, and of course, on the picture there are 2 torches. So torches, lanterns, they seem a bit mixed up, but not a big deal. I suppose to some extent you can use those interchangeably. What else was there? Also, there is a point in this book, and I can't remember where it is now, that it says alas and alack, and I thought that's kind of cool, that a writer would use alas and alack. I certainly appreciate that kind of thing. Right, I think I should have a look at the probabilities now. Let's see, open up my BBC Basic. And as usual, I'm doing it in BBC Basic. And interestingly, of course, in this book, there's hardly any encounters at all. If you follow the optimum, simplest path, most of your conflicts can be resolved with items or spells. So there's one fight in the beginning at the campfire. You have to fight those in order to win the game. And there's 3 opponents. They all have quite low stats. There's a 5 skill, 6 stamina, 6 skill, 4 stamina, 5 skill, 7 stamina, excuse me. And you have to fight them in a row. And that's technically then the most challenging battle in the whole game, if you do everything the easiest way possible. Then there's the Gark you have to fight against. If you use the weakness spell, he is very easy to do as well. He's skill 5, stamina 5 with a weakness spell. Otherwise, he would be a very strong opponent. Now, that's when you get to the trickiest bit of the book, is getting the Golden Fleece. Because in order to get the Golden Fleece, you have to test your luck. This is the only time you have to test your luck in the game. If your luck is low, this is a little bit tricky. But you're given the option of doing it as many times as you like. Of course, every time you test luck, your luck goes down. At some point, you can use a luck spell, bring your luck back up again, and go down again. So what I've done in my simulation, of course, if you have different stats, there might be different spells that might be ideal for you to bring. So I've just been thinking, do you need, if your stamina and skill is low, do you need a stamina spell as well? So I've been doing different calculations and found that a good sort of, without trying to go make a sort of an artificial intelligence system to make it into an or a complicated algorithm, I decided that I would take with me 2 stamina spells. I would take with me all the spells that I absolutely need to win the game in the easiest way possible. And the rest of my spells would be luck spells. And even at the lowest magic ability, there are some luck spells already included in that. And then it depends how many magic points you have, how many luck spells you have. And of course, when you go and get the Golden Fleece, it just tests for luck until you run out of luck and luck spells. So that's what I've been doing here. It looks a bit wonky, but... and that's it. That's the whole simulation. There is this little bit here, and then it's got, of course, the fighting routine. I don't need the 2 opponents this time, and luck roll routine, skill test routine is not needed. There are no provisions in this game. Instead, there are magic spells for getting your stamina back, and then using luck in combat is, I don't think that would make a difference here in a positive way. Just to look at the numbers now. So here we have. So you have skill 12, Stamina 24, Luck 12, and Magic 18. That is the maximum. You get a winning chance of 99.998%. So pretty much on par with the Warlock of Firetop Mountain. If you go down skill, because that's usually the most one that makes the biggest difference, because there's hardly any combat now, so that shouldn't make much of a difference. As you can see, it can't make much of a difference. What about minimums? So 7, 14, 7, and magic. So that's how much again? 8. This is an interesting number. Yes. 71.54% chance is the lowest probability of winning this game if you know the right path and you pick the right spells. I think that's quite impressive. So that means that this is technically, in a way, the easiest book in the whole system, probably. Easier than Warlock of Firetop Mountain, which is, of course, becomes harder when your skill and stamina go quite far down. So this means that absolutely regardless of abilities in this book, you will be able to do well. You just have to find the right path. But even so, even if that is the chance of winning, even if when you know the right path, it is easy to do, I still think this is a great book. I mean, the replayability of it may not be the greatest, but the thing is, if you wait a few years, you would have forgotten a little bit about what you did, and you can play it again. And also, I think everyone should be playing the different paths just to go through them. So I still think, for now, this is my favorite book because it's written really well. It's structured exceedingly well. Every encounter is memorable. Every encounter has an illustration as well, and it just has all the right ingredients, I think, to make an entertaining and memorable game book. There are no boring bits in it, to put it like that. It's all entertaining, it's all exciting, and I will highly recommend this book. So I think that's all I need to say for the day. Yes, I've mentioned typos, the orphan. Yeah, I think so. So, yes. So the chances of winning really high. You don't need to worry about it. What you need to worry about is finding the right path and enjoying yourself. Indeed. So my next book then is going to be, and I will start playing it later today probably, is The Forest of Doom. So that's Ian Livingstone's next entry in the series, book number 3. And I have played this one before. I do seem to remember it's easy-ish, although there are certainly a lot of dead ends and places where you can die, as you would expect. And in this one, as far as I can remember, you also needed to get... there's a list of items you can buy that will... It's a bit like picking spells, in a way, in the Citadel of Chaos. It's picking items to buy in this one for your journey through the forest. And if you pick the wrong ones, you might die because you wouldn't have the correct one for the encounter that you get into. So, yeah, looking forward to this one. It'll be very exciting. So, before my camera runs out of time, which is at half an hour, of course, thank you very much, EU, I'm going to finish it up, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you again when I'm playing The Forest of Doom later. But thanks for watching this, and thanks for watching my channel, and seeing my... If you enjoy my game book playing, then please leave a comment, give a video like, subscribe if you like as well. It's always nice to get new subscribers. So, and also love a good discussion about game books. So feel free to ask any questions or comment or anything like that in the comments section. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for now, and I will see you again very soon. Later today, probably, or tomorrow morning. It takes a little while to process, render, and upload the video. So, well, goodbye for now.